Every business has an ambition. PayPal Open is the platform designed to help you grow into yours. With business loans so you can expand and access to hundreds of millions of PayPal customers worldwide. And your customers can pay all the ways they want with PayPal, Venmo, Pay Later, and all major cards, so you can focus on scaling up. When it's time to get growing, there's one platform for all business. PayPal Open. Grow today at paypalopen.com. Loans subject to approval in available locations.
Hey friends, welcome back to Let's Hash It Out. I'm the nerd in charge, and tonight we're diving in on one of the deepest rabbit holes I've ever researched, and I've done quite a few rabbit holes, and I've looked into some wild stuff. So today we're talking about your DNA and your identity and detoxing and what happens when AI gets access to the original human blueprint. All right, now before we begin, I want to be crystal clear. I am not a doctor, I am not a geneticist, I am not a licensed anything, and I am a deep researcher only. A pattern recognizer, and, a very curious human who connects dots. Nothing in this episode is medical or scientific advice. It is inspiration to research what matters to you. Cool? Cool. All right, also, just letting you know that clean eating isn't enough if you don't know where your L-cysteine comes from, and we'll discuss more on that later. So let's discuss SNPs and the blueprint from within. Start with the basics. What are SNPs? Single nucleotide polymorphisms. They're tiny mutations, or, like variations in your DNA. They don't change the fact that you're human, but they do influence how your body works. SNPs can affect how you, say, detox toxins from your body, things you take in and stuff like that, air, things like that, respond to trauma. It'll mess with how you absorb your vitamins, how you process your emotions or your stress that you go through on a daily basis. It can even help you, or hurt you in the way you perceive spiritual experiences. These little code switches might be what makes some people feel everything on a psychic level and others walk through life emotionally tone deaf. If you've ever felt like you've been watched, tracked, or selected, your genes might be the reason, especially if you have some rare traits that show up in only 1 or 2% of the population. You can look into that. So the MTHFR, that one is like the detox bouncer gene, and it's trending. So let's talk about that. It's infamous motherfucker gene and what it stands for. So let me see if I can get this straight. Methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. And yes, that sounds like a Marvel villain or DC, whoever you follow. But this gene is responsible for methylation, a process your body uses to detox. It also turns nutrients into usable forms and helps regulate your emotions and your neurotransmitters while repairing your DNA. And if it's not working properly, can it do all those things? Oh, I think not. So there are two big variants that people talk about. So let me name them. You can write these down if you want to. C677T and A1298C. If you've got one or both, your ability to detox, absorb B vitamins, and even bounce back from trauma might be impaired. Now, like I said, I am not an expert and I am not offering advice. I don't have things you can buy unless you ask me. I do offer that stuff, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm trying to get you to think and research for yourself, and if you've done your DNA, to run it through some tools to maybe see what else you got going on. So like the C677T and the A1298C, from my understanding, everybody has these pathways of methylation and detox, and we all have the different genes that allow it to happen. And if you have genes that are turned on or off, then they will either have issues or be better at it or slow at it or fast at it. And so it's not like I have the motherfucker gene or I don't have the motherfucker gene. It's almost like, what way is yours working? Do you have a clean process? Do you not have a clean process? Everybody has to methylate folate in their system or detox it out, and we take a lot of it in if you eat cereal and shit. It's in everything. So let's get back to this. So if you've got one or both, your ability to absorb B vitamins, even bounce back from trauma, might be impaired. And this is important because you might not handle stress like other people. You might not heal the same way. You might be more sensitive to things, chemicals, medications, even fluorescent lights. A lot of times that stuff is trending too. Like, I can't see the big light. Don't turn on the big light. That might be a methyl process. us. It might be why we all have ADHD. And what we want to understand is this a new trending thing? Has this always been happening? Has something caused our genes to turn these things on and off en masse so that we all are experiencing them? Now, it's not in your head, and something that is literally in your body, and it's how you function. What we're trying to get at is this how you function and your family has functioned naturally without the interjection of any environmental or poisonous standards, or is this an offshoot response in your DNA to something that was done like that's the questions I'm searching for. And in order to understand all of that, you have to understand the research and what can and cannot change genes and what you can and cannot inherit. All of that is very important. But literally, you'll go to the doctor with some of these situations and they'll tell you it's in your head. It's not in your head. It's literally in your body. Here's where it gets a little deeper. There's speculation in the trauma research circles that people with the motherfucker mutations are less programmable or harder to control and more psychically attuned. So maybe they got more of the control methods, let's call it, that people say don't exist. If you believe in the MK Ultra style programs, the motherfucker gene might have been a filter in who was targeted or who was resisted, right? And so now we have a name for it, but maybe they were just looking for those genetic mutations because of certain training methods or things that needed to happen. So knowing this about yourself isn't about panic or speculation or conspiracy. It's about peace, about realizing your path to healing might be different, and that's okay. The Human Genome Project is what I want to discuss next, and that's why I'm going into that, is because we are all our own DNA, and then en masse, people wanted to study it. So the reason that I'm talking about DNA and studying your genetics and things like that to a community of people who are targeted and do not trust anyone is because I also don't trust anyone, but I also know that the anyone we don't trust knows a lot about us, and they have access to money and tools that we don't have, and they use those to research their enemies. So if you find yourself on the enemy side of somebody who's smart and intelligent, you kind of want to know what they know. Well, if they know about your internal DNA, how you function, how you react, then it might be a little bit easier to set small, minuscule traps that are unrecognizable to the human eye of, what's going on here, but would really throw you out because they are literally pushing your buttons. If you know what your buttons are, you can kind of put walls up around your buttons. Just saying. So let's go into the Human Genome Project and why they're mapping you again. So let's zoom out a minute. The Human Genome Project wrapped up in 2003. It decoded all 3 billion base pairs in human DNA. Officially, it was a project of hope. Let's map the code of life to cure disease and help humanity. Quietly, it built the foundation of programmable biology. Out of that research came CRISPR gene editing, biotech patents, trait tracking, designer babies, genetically targeted pharmaceuticals, and now there's a new wave of genome research, the Human Genome Project. And from my understanding, don't quote me, please go research, and I'm not causing any shade on anything that was done with the Human Genome Project and their Project of Hope. I'm just asking questions. This Human Genome Project seems to be using AI to digitally reconstruct a more inclusive version of the human genome, which, sounds right to study, and maybe all kinds of things with that. Maybe we can study it easier and not have to study on humans, or I don't know what their purpose is, but you can find out. But it sounds nice, and diversity and equity and representation, but I'm thinking, are they maybe using AI to fill in missing pieces? Are they maybe building editable templates of what it means to be human? Are they creating synthetic genomes and silica? That means fully digital DNA. I don't know. Ask yourself, why would they want a perfect editable digital version of the human race? Who gets to own that code? And what happens to those people if they create a whole, family lineage of AI humans? How does that work? And what happens to us? Originals. Are we original? Has this happened before and some of us are not original? It's not sci-fi, it's in the news. I read it last week, and that's why I'm talking about it today. So go look it up and let me know what you find out. Human Genome Project. So I believe it's the next phase of the biodigital convergence, and I think your DNA is the data. So that's where it comes into, do you want to put your DNA on in any of this? Maybe not. But if you're one of those people that is very hyper-focused on, I'm not going to give them my DNA, then if you are using public bathrooms, if you are going public places, using public things, going anywhere in the medical community and offering samples of anything so they can test you or fix you or heal you, if you have checked any of the boxes when you've gone into the medical doctors, hospitals, or any of those, skincare facilities, things like that, your cells, your DNA, your spit, your blood, whatever it is, has been somewhere on file somewhere, and that is already hackable. And if you are highly targeted, then we can get into spy shit where they can take the prints off of the cup you used this morning at the local cafe. So I hear you, but I also believe that a lot of that has been put to keep us so scared to study our DNA because we think we're keeping it private. And in fact, they've been able to study it from what we've given out. And that's just, conspiracy, and I don't know that it's true, but I do know that you can learn a lot about yourself and how to protect yourself if you understand your DNA, and there's not a lot of ways to understand your DNA if you don't look at your DNA. And so I get the Human Genome Project, right? And I'm not faulting it at all. I think, everything starts for good, and I think everything has a reason for good and this, that, and the other. And then there is some stuff that can happen from the good that is done by people who see it for maybe a not good purpose. And so that's why I think we need to be asking about this new project that would build an AI DNA sequence. I understand the concept of it in medical terms and stuff, and it's interesting to me too. But I just want to think forward and wonder what happens to the originals who they deem maybe not good enough anymore, and so they've fixed us. Is that where Divergent, the movie, comes in the pure versus the some altered? I mean, are all of the people who, she ended up in the white outfit up in the upper elites because she was pure? Is that what that was talking about? And is that why we are divergent now and neurodivergent and things like that? Is that why that's trending? I don't know. Watch those movies. Tell me if it kind of relates in. It was weird when they ended up taking that route with it. But I do want to talk about, if you are interested in studying your DNA, when I first became interested in it, say in the 90s or 80s, I've always been interested in researching who I was. There were not things available. I remember looking at the Bible in my family for our family tree and just materializing in my head some visuals of who I thought these people were, these ancestors, right? But what's interesting is that I don't think we always know what we're looking for, who they are, or things like that, if we're just guessing. We can come up with a very good conclusion, but if we had some research, if we had some documents, it would be great. And so for a long time, between that time of research when nothing was available but the family Bible and family stories versus now when everything is digitized and there's everything from everywhere and everybody else's research available, it really makes you question, what else can I find? And if you're interested in studying stuff and you also think you're targeted and you also know that everybody else already has some of the DNA, then you can go about, hiding who you are or doing anonymous searches, as much as anonymous is these days, whatever, but you can do that and still do some research. There's a tool that I recently discovered, and it's pretty interesting for the basics, how do you detox things and how do you methylate things? Very important, Genetic Genie. And they say they have a privacy policy that I read pretty strategic, and they don't store your data, and they also, they delete it after 24 hours, and they also don't name it in the system and stuff like that. They're just giving you the data and the details. So the more you can be alert to who you are, how you are, even who you're related to, and what curses you need to break. So I do want to discuss AID and tools. All is based on your energy level of learning, what you already know, and how comfortable you are with using online tools to do this kind of stuff. Maybe you just want to get your genetic testing done and then print out your giant list of 600,000 SNPs and go research what they are in your own encyclopedias, and that's totally fine too. Whatever works best for you. I just want you to start thinking for yourself instead of trusting what everybody else thinks and says or is promoted to you to think and say, because maybe there's more to you than meets the eye. So some of the tools I found, I said, Genetic Genie, it's a big one for methylation analysis. This is where you find out whether your motherfucker components, COMTs, MAOs, whether those genes are causing mood swings, anxiety, vitamin deficiencies, things like that. Also, Prometheus is very popular. I think Genetic Genie is made is made to be like a free version of Prometheus. I don't know. But it takes the raw DNA files, from if you did a 23andMe, which they are in a lawsuit or something like that right now. I don't know, or they were just bought or something. Go research it. I believe there's some data breaching going on there, so I can understand why people don't want to get their genetic DNA done. There's also very highfalutin places to get your genes done that are, more private or longer sequences. You can get more SNPs in the whole thing because we have, I think it was 3 billion the Human Genome Project studied, and, some of the DNA testing only goes to 600,000 or 700,000. So we really can't know everything unless we have the resources, and they do have the resources. So we just need to try and catch up at least, right? But Prometheus will take your raw data. They'll compare it to research databases and tell you your risk levels, your health conditions, even weird stuff like earwax type or whether you are a deep sleeper. These tools are powerful. I don't use them to live in fear, use them to be aware. I don't do any of the disease testing and stuff like that because I believe diseases are turned off and on by environmental factors most of the time, and that we can control that with our stress and stuff like that. And if you are told that you're going to get this disease by 35, then you're going to stress about that instead of fixing your life. And maybe that's the reason for some of this stuff, is to scare some people. So don't use it that way. Use it for, what are my genes here? What are they doing? What are their on and off switches? What does that mean for me? And how can I eat on a daily basis that chemically works with that genetic code? What medications should I take and should I not take? What do I react to? What environmental factors do I react to cigarette smoke badly? Then maybe I'm going to choose not to go around the places where that's normal so that I'm the odd one out and always feeling self-conscious. If you understand more about you, then you can tailor your life experience to be better. So with the tools, you can understand that stuff. So you want to be aware. Maybe, do I need more magnesium? Maybe my trauma isn't just energetic. Maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe it's biochemical. And you can also be kind of crazy and ask different AI tools, just some interesting prompts. Try it and tag me in your results if you make videos or whatever. But, grab some of your SNPs. And a lot of times you want to try things from the first, second, third chromosomes, things like that, the beginning chromosomes. Grab some of those SNPs and run it through like an AI tool and say, these are sample DNA SNPs. Pretend you're a geneticist who understands the Human Genome Project and also understands MK Ultra, Project Naomi, I think it was MK Naomi, Project Paperclip, and those types of situations, understanding what they would be searching for, and also understands CRISPR technologies and how it's done. Analyze these SNPs and let me know if this would have been a targeted sample, if this person would be good to manipulate, if this person, would be a targeted person that would be used for these MK projects based on these SNPs. And also, does it look like any of these, DNA samples, these SNPs, does it look like any of this code has been altered by the CRISPR? And it'll tell you yes or no, or this or that or the other. Now, I suggest, if it does say yes, don't just freak out. I suggest taking those SNPs, analyzing them, what they mean, what they are, who else has those types of, responses, ask other tools, go to scientific journals and read about what the scientific community is saying about those genes and the CRISPRs and stuff, because we could be looking at, yes, someone maybe messed around with your genes in a lab while you were in the big utero, but also we could be talking about the apples you eat. Are they genetically modified, and is that what we mean by GMO, genetically modifying who? Is it just the apple they're modifying? I don't know. And GMOs are in a lot of things and have been for a very long time, so maybe they have edited some of our genes. But you can ask your AI tools to analyze your SNPs for that, and it's pretty cool. And I think it's empowering, because who else has access to this? All of them, and knowledge is power. So I think it's empowering us, but maybe it's prepping us for control. I don't know. Go at your own risk. I do believe that there's a spiritual psyop in the war of origin. I don't believe that we know the origin of humanity, and I think some people are consistently tried to be isolated out of existence for whatever reason. So let's go beyond the flesh and look at spiritual for a minute. If DNA is the language of creation, then the genome manipulation is a spiritual warfare, and you can call it what you want, but transhumanism, evolution, synthetic ascension, at the root of it, I have this question. Who gets to define what a human is? When you digitize DNA and feed into AI, you strip it of its divine imprint. You turn identity into decode and you erase tribes. So what I'm talking about is understanding your DNA so you can find your tribe. But I think the goal of harvesting DNA, studying DNA on the mass level of elite scientists or whatever would be more of a spiritual, let's erase some tribes. And so that's where we need to all be a little bit more educated. Because like I said, when you digitize DNA, you feed it into AI, you strip it of its divine imprint, and you turn identity into code, you erase tribes, you blend bloodlines, you replace real ancestors with synthetic data models. This is not just about health, it's about legacy. It's about power. It's about turning the original creation into a copy-paste commodity, a brand new human, one that's fixed. And if you've ever felt like you've been hunted or hidden, if you've got ancestry that was erased, renamed, assimilated, this is your call to reclaim it. Study your bloodline, decode your SNPs, learn your methylation patterns, not for fear, but for freedom. Learn who your ancestors were. Were some of your grandmothers married very early? Were some of your grandmothers Melungeon? Were some of your grandfathers in Masons, Odd Fellows, other organizations? Were they architects and surveyors? Were they in the war? Were they firemen? Different situations can all be part of the code that you might carry. And knowing that kind of stuff, if you're a genetic code breaker and want to reset your DNA and stuff, then all the woo-woo science that they call it and all those crystal things you're doing and stuff are great and all, but what are you doing them to? You need to visualize who you actually are. And with the tools available today, you can research back to at least the 1200s, which some people say is the 200s, which is almost Jesus's years. So I just find that very interesting. But on to another more interesting topic. Go with me here for a second and take a little break, take a little drink. I'm going to have some water. Do you know what you're swallowing? It might be more human than you think, and let's talk real for a second. I drink energy drinks. I try to drink a clean energy drink. I know it has taurine and stuff. It doesn't have caffeine. It has natural caffeines, different stuff like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's beneficial. I'm clean, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Maybe it is. But I came upon some stuff while I was researching, after you get your genetics done and you can research who you are DNA-wise and why you react to certain things, even why you jump and startle the way you do, you start to wonder, well, how can I detox? How can I feel better? And, if you've been taking supplements and all these types of things, you start to come upon why the supplements were not working for you. And sometimes during that research, you come upon, what I call byproducts of sanity. I don't know if this is good that I stumbled on this or not, but certain things, when the trend of I think it was cyanocobalamin, the B vitamin that was made off of a bacteria that grows on, sludge, from my understanding, sometimes it can be made and harvested off of human sewage sludge, creates a bacteria, and then they take that bacteria off the top and use that in your energy drinks and call it a B vitamin. And maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't have any microscopes to be able to test all of that kind of stuff, and I'm not a biochemist. However, it sounds gross, and I probably wouldn't drink the energy drink if it was advertised that way. So that's back into why marketing is mind control, because if they told you that it had harvested bacteria off of the top of feces on the drink package instead of loaded with B vitamins, you might not drink it. So marketing is mind control. And when I talk real, I want to discuss why, if we know all of this stuff that is good for us, bad for us, whatever, we can make our own decisions, and then you fall for the mind control of the marketing of making your own decisions, but you're still doing bad things because it was faked or lied to you, that's a problem. And I just want you to be able to think for yourself. So we live in a time where people are trying to do their best. They're avoiding junk foods. They're switching to supplements. They're using beef tallow. A lot of companies are noticing that and changing their recipes and stuff. It's just ridiculous. It's good that people are waking up. And a lot of people are trying to go even vegan to feel better, or vegetarian. And, it helps them think clearer, stay out of systems that exploit animals or the planet. And I totally respect that, truly. Especially the ones that are going all in and double checking every label, researching every ingredient or company and how the practices of, harvesting or whatever it is, if they do eat certain things like eggs or fish, how they harvest, I think is very, very important. And there was a documentary that was, I thought, very interesting for vegans and vegetarians who eat fish to watch, called Seaspiracy. It made quite a while ago, so I don't know if it's changed at all. But, I respect the vegan and vegetarian diets, the keto diets, the all meat diets, because those all take very much researching and what do you call it, like guts. You have to go all in, because if you understand molecular biology a little bit, you know that even the gluten-free diet, you can't be around gluten if you actually do have a sensitivity or an issue, because it can, like a tiny gluten problem can stay in your system for 3 weeks and activate all kinds of symptoms randomly throughout the 3 weeks of it trying to get out of your system. So if you don't detox properly and you have a gluten sensitivity or sensitivities or allergies to other things, or you don't create amino acids properly, or whatever the situations are, you might be harming yourself by trying to be good, or, by not knowing, you might be harming yourself by eating the things that are causing you problems. And so knowledge is power, but sometimes if we don't research and we fall for marketing, or we choose to believe that the companies wouldn't do anything that's shady, or we just choose not to research, there's an uncomfortable truth. Even when you're trying to do everything right, there are still some companies that are letting things slip in. And I can promise you that there are some vegans out there who claim and post content to be super clean and use absolutely no, animal byproducts, who take L-cysteine or use it in some of their supplements or drinks or any of that kind of stuff, for example. And that's an amino acid that's used in food and cosmetics. It's found in breads, flavor enhancers, hair products, supplements, things like that. But guess what? One of the cheapest and most common sources of L-cysteine in the global supply chain, hydrolyzed human hair. So you're not okay with, animal byproducts because we have to save the animals, but you're okay with using human hair or animal feathers, and that's where or human feces and stuff. That's where I'm like, I get that you want to be cleaner, but is it cleaner? Is it really cleaner? Is it really better? And are you okay with human byproducts? Because often the hydrolyzed human hair is imported from China, and we know that people say, these vitamins, these things, these are cheap ingredients. When you say cheap ingredients, what do you mean by cheap ingredients? How can it be the same ingredient but harvested different? And here's an example. I'm a marketing person, and where does that hair come from, right? And that's my question, is whose hair are they using to make this amino acid that I'm, ingesting or putting on my skin? And that's a little odd. And so I just, do you know about that? Well, let's also talk about the pathways of being a different type of harvested ingredient. Look at your labels, look at the companies, look at the sourcing, look at how it's sourced, and do you agree with that? Do you want it done? Because it's not just a product on a shelf. You're supporting that method of harvesting if you buy that product or use it. So if you think that something is being torturous to animals, or is disgusting, or is not clean, but you still use the product or buy the products that it's in, you're not voting against the product. You're buying it and then talking bad about it. So I just don't understand that concept. Like when I was marketing and paying my rent by writing commercials, scripts, and stuff like that, and like getting paid by the word, I got a job one time making a commercial for an argan oil, and they said that they were super pure. They were one of the best argan oils, but they can't seem to get a marketing budget from their company, and they just want to be able to, compete with some of these big names, because they actually physically know how the argan oil that is bought by some of the big name brands in the stores, and I still see these names in the stores today, they don't know how to compete with that, but they know that how that's harvested. Their argan oil is harvested by people who go out and get the beans, roast the beans, do the things properly, and it's a very intense process. And I used to know all about it, and I would talk about it, but I don't now. Just go research for yourself. But anyway, there's the process of doing it by hand and doing it, and it takes a while, but it's the right way, and you can put, energy into it, and it's clean, but that costs more. The cheap way to do it is to go out and harvest out of goat poop or whatever the more. And ingredient sourcing is very important if that ingredient is sourced in a way or made in a way that not only might it be disgusting to you, and it's not necessarily disgusting that they use that, because we know that poop is fertilizer, big deal. Human poop I'm not okay with, and if I don't know that they're harvesting that from my energy drinks, I'm not okay with that. Now, beans that take off the shell so that they can mash them, clean them, and get the oil out of them easy, I might be okay with that, but it is still a cheaper process. So I don't know, but that was the interesting thing about marketing, was that they're a luxury brand and a clean brand and a fun brand and a this and that and luxury prices, and they're the cheap brand actually. So it was interesting, and it made me think about labels and food and stuff, and that was a long time ago. So I'm still thinking, and I just think it's interesting. Were these people paid to do that? Where is the hair coming from for the L-cysteine? And you think about China, can you imagine and this is a horrid thought, but I saw it on a Reddit thread, so it's not me having it. But you know how they talk about the human harvesting over there, which is horrific, and then you think about the attitude of use it all in the hunting world. Would the hair be used for that purpose? And so it's a cheap byproduct that we then go buy. And in that case, I would totally stop using it in anything that it comes from. So research is power. Knowing what you're eating made of and how your DNA reacts is powerful. Did the people consent to that is an important thing, because, vegans talk about the animals can't consent to being killed to be your steak. So did the human consent to being the hair source for your L-cysteine supplement? And why is it considered an acceptable input for food and wellness products instead of us being able to grow food or whatever in our gardens or, other things? So why are we going to damage our DNA and then harvest human hair to make a product that would help our DNA fix? Why can't we just keep our DNA better instead of using things that damage our DNA or damaging them on purpose? So for my plant-based friends out there, if you're not eating meat but still taking amino acid supplements or commercial wellness powers, check your sources. You might be unknowingly ingesting animal, because they do use chicken feathers and other things like that, or human byproducts. Now, before anyone clutches their pearls, let me say this: I'm not anti-vegan. I love anyone on a path of conscious eating, but we have to go deeper than the labels, because even some so-called vegan or clean products use inputs that would horrify you if fully disclosed. And that segues into spiritual nutrition, genetic manipulation. See, this goes way beyond preference. When we don't know what we're eating, we don't know what we're coding into our bodies. If you eat animals and plants that you raised yourself from soil you've blessed without chemical tampering, your DNA recognizes that. Your cells know that. When you eat food that is either cooked with anger, as we've seen in movies and discussions and science studies and stuff, or laced with chemical residues, hormone disrupt, foreign DNA, whatever it is, your body isn't just digesting it, it's adapting to digest it. And that's evolution, right? So it's not always in a good way that you want your body to adapt. Some of the CDC-approved food additives and chemicals alter gene expression. That is the very definition of epigenetics. Some of them mimic hormones like xenoestrogens and plastics, soy fillers, man boobs. Can we talk about that? Or directly interfere with the methylation pathways like we talked about earlier with the MTHFR genes. And then it becomes a trend that they can sell you supplements that have some of these things in it. So watch. If you're wondering why you feel off, even when you're doing everything the influencers say, this might be it. Your food is messaging your genome. Your supplements may be sending you coded signals, and not all of them were made with sovereignty in mind. This isn't about fear, it's about food discernment. Your genes are responding to what you feed them. So I believe that we are in a war for the blueprint, and the battlefield is your plate, your pill bottle, and your pantry. I'll wrap it up with this. Your DNA is you, but it's also more than you. It's a map, it's a memory, and maybe even a message. We're in a war over the blueprint of life, and whether the next generation will be programmed or sovereign, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to inspire you and show you the tools, the trends, and the timeline. You decide what to do with it. Thanks for tuning in, my fellow nerds. I will be talking more about this on the BG Cast on Rumble, and if this sparked something in you, please share it or email me at FacetsTV and we can talk about it. The team from Let's Hash It Out at gmail.com is always available to let's hash out other details, and if you have research or if you want any of the links I discussed, just let me know. You can go read on your raw data file like it's the new Dead Sea Scrolls and then tell me what you found. I found a lot of my stuff that's very, very interesting, and I'd like to know where it's right and wrong and this and that and the other, so let's compare notes. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and please stay human.
Every business has an ambition. PayPal Open is the platform designed to help you grow into yours. With business loans so you can expand and access to hundreds of millions of PayPal customers worldwide. And your customers can pay all the ways they want with PayPal, Venmo, Pay Later, and all major cards, so you can focus on scaling up. When it's time to get growing, there's one platform for all business. PayPal Open. Grow today at paypalopen.com. Loans subject to approval in available locations.